Well, you guys asked for it, so today we're going to take a look at all of the profiles of the units coming in the Warcrow Winds from the North battle box. Welcome back to Lindworm Adventurers. My name is Hydra and it's time for more Warcrow. As ever, this series is supported by CCG Winkle. Don't forget you can book your pre-order copy of the Winds from the North battle box with them now. Simply click the link in the description of this video to get yours booked today. A few short weeks ago we had a chat about what we knew of Warcrow and included some of the profiles for the battle box minis. Well, you guys told us you wanted to look at all of them, and benevolent dice gods as we are, your wish is our command. So today's video is going to not only look at the profiles from the Northern Tribes, but we're going to compare side by side the equivalent Hegemony and Northern Tribe units. We're going to look at the differences between the factions and consider how they impact the playstyles both with each other and on their own. As before, note that these cards are subject to change, so there may be some differences in the final release versions. Also, this video is going to be pretty simple, just the profiles on the screen and me chatting, so grab a cup of tea and off we go. Let's start with the big guys themselves, the two named characters in the box. For the Northern Tribes, Alborc, and for the Hegemony of Emberseg, Dragoslav. Starting at the top, Alborc is 50 points and gives 3 command tokens, whilst Drago is 40 points and gives the same number of command tokens. Looking at the core stats, the total move is the same per move skill at 5, whilst Alborc has 2 extra strides in his charge. Alborc has 1 more wound, but his willpower is a yellow die less than Drago's. Morale is the same, and as characters, their availability is 1. Moving to the characteristics and keywords, both share character, their race, and high command. This last meaning that if you field them in a force, they have to be the army commander and there can't be any other units in your list with this characteristic. Both have join, letting them tag into specific units in their army. Both also have elite, which lets them convert hollow results on dice rolls into solid ones. Often these results wouldn't have any effect, so being able to convert any and all of them into successes is pretty epic. But note that this isn't compulsory. Why would you not want to convert them? One word, switches, but more on that in a minute. Drago also has Bloodlust Varrinc. This means that if he's not engaged in combat and there's a Varrinc unit in charge range, he has to charge. Then, when he has charged, he gets to re-roll his attack dice against that unit as long as they're engaged. Great for damage output, not so great as your enemy can have a degree of control over what Drago does by being sneaky with Varrinc positioning. Now let's look at their attacks and defense, starting with Drago. Just a quick recap. With attack dice, red is the strongest, orange the mid, and yellow the weakest. That is to say, the most solid to least solid symbols on them. Keep that in mind as we run through the stats, though if I describe them as strong or weak, it's a simplification to make things clearer. Similarly, the defense dice go green, blue, and black. So, Drago has a range 8, 1 weak yellow dice attack with a built-in hit. No switches or mods on it, just a straight out poof to the face. In close combat, he has 2 strong red dice with 2 weak yellow dice and a strong green defense die as standard. That's right, Drago defends and attacks at the same time. He can parry as he slices up his enemy. He can also take a stress token to add in an extra hit and solid exclamation mark to his result. Drago also has a switch that, if he has a result including 2 exclamation marks, he can give his target the vulnerable condition. If he does, then the next attack against that target may cancel a dice which includes a successful block on it. For defense, he has 2 medium blue dice, a built-in block, and can push to gain a stress and an extra strong green defense die. When we say push, we mean he can take a stress to gain that buff. Alborc, on the other hand, is a bit of a beast. With no range attack, we're straight into the choppy. 1 strong red, 2 mid orange, and an automatic hit are his pool. He can then push to gain a hollow hit and a filled exclamation. His switches are strong too, with 2 exclamations letting you cancel a defense from your target and gain an auto hit, or a hollow exclamation giving out vulnerable, or a hollow hit giving 1 stress. This is where elite being an optional keyword is important. If you had to convert hollows, then Alborc could never get his switches off. Being optional, you can choose to push to gain a hollow hit, then use that as a switch to give out a stress, or use elite to convert that hollow hit into a solid hit to finish off a target. As elite is applied after all dice rolls, re-rolls and switches, you can make that choice after you've got a clear view of the combat's outcome. On defense, Alborc has 2 medium blue dice and a weak black, with the option to push to roll a strong red attack dice and gain an auto hit, which is nice. Overall, Alborc has much more reliable damage output than Drago, with even his defense including the option to slice up your opponent. So what does Drago do then? Well, first on the right we have the conquest value. This is how much weight these two add to controlling an objective. With 0, Alborc doesn't help when controlling an objective at all, whereas Drago does. With objectives being central to winning the game, this is very important. Next we come to their abilities. Again, let's start with Drago. The Anvil command skill buffs a unit's conquest value by 2. Again, this is key for winning the game, so really important. Inspiring Leadership is a passive ability that lets units use his willpower when making willpower checks. These are used for a range of different things, including rallying troops, ignoring certain conditions and abilities. This is a really nice buff to keep your units in the fight and fighting well. Alborc, by comparison, has the Warg and the Crow command ability he uses once per round. This lets an activated Orc unit trigger a Varank unit to complete a single action, or a Varank unit to trigger an Orc one. This extra action doesn't count as the triggered unit activating, so it doesn't lose its go if it's not been activated yet, nor does it gain a stress token if it's already gone this round. We then have 2 passive abilities. War Alliance allows characters who can join Orc units to join Varank units, whether their card says they can or not, whilst the second, Sword of the Sun, buffs Alborc when he's damaged. First he gains Dispel so he can start to cancel magic attacks, and he gains a weak yellow attack die to his attack and defense rolls. Both characters can join units, so the bottom portion of their profile is their character in unit profile. Not that many of the abilities are changed here, but many don't carry over. So Drago brings his willpower and an extra morale to any unit he joins. He then adds a hit to all attacks and can push to add a second. He also adds a successful defense and can push to add an extra strong green defense die. Drago then adds 2 to the unit's conquest value, which is nice as it makes him stronger in a unit than out at controlling objectives. The Anvil command ability remains, so that +2 conquest value to a friendly unit stays. So he's now effectively adding 4 conquest value to the army on his own by joining a unit. The Instructor Ensign passive ability is a double-edged sword. The elite ability will make any unit more potent, but the Bloodlust ability could be used against you. Nobody Falls Under My Command passive ability lets you reroll any defense dice, which is awesome, just wow. Alborc, by comparison, brings his willpower +1 morale, an extra hit in combat, an extra success in defense, and no conquest value. There are no pushes added in here either. Simple, solid, reliable, but not very potent. All of his abilities disappear as well, bar the Warg and the Crow. So this really speaks to the commander's ability. Drago is a tactical commander, buffing units, making it easier to control objectives, and bringing real change to any units he joins. By comparison, Alborc is a lone wolf. No, not a lone wolf, he's a lone sledgehammer. He's got epic damage output and many ways to make life bound for your enemy, and if they hit him back, Sword of the Sun means things only get worse. But if you add him to a unit, he chills right out and loses all of his passive abilities. Now let's look at the non-character version commander options you can take. For the northern tribes, that's the Wrathmane, and for hegemony, that's the Hetman. Both units are cheaper than the named characters. The Wrathmane loses a command token, a point of morale, and 20 points by comparison to Alborc. The Hetman loses a wound, a weak yellow dice on whip, a point of morale, and 15 points. For characteristics and keywords, let's start with the Wrathmane this time. All much the same, but the ability to join Varank units is gone, and Raging appears. Raging gives an extra auto hit on attack when charging, which is nice. The Hetman actually loses quite a bit. Gone is Bloodlusts, Join moves to any infantry, and annoyingly, Elite is gone too. To combat, the Wrathmane loses an auto hit on attack, but gains a weak yellow in place. pushing for stress remains the same as Alborc, with switches now letting you add an extra wound on a hollow hit or giving out vulnerable. Defense is identical to Alborc, as is the 0 rate for conquest value. The Hetman actually has a stronger ranged attack with a medium orange die over Drago's yellow and the same auto hit. However, in combat, the Hetman is noticeably weaker, losing a red and a yellow die, and downgrading from a green defense to a blue in attack is also noticeable. Even if he does gain a single auto hit, losing the switch isn't nice, but it does mean that losing the filled-in exclamation from the push isn't as awful. Same in defense, a medium blue is gone, but the push goes from strong to an auto block, and he has 0 conquest value, which is significant. And on to the abilities. The Wrathmane's command ability lets you target an enemy within 10 strides and give it frightened and disarmed conditions. Frightened means you have to re-roll any successful willpower tests until you succeed a second time, then the condition goes. Disarmed means that the target must cancel a die from their attack with a success on it. If there's more than one die with a success, the enemy picks which die goes. The Hetman's command ability takes off 1 stress for all friendlies in 20 paces, once per round, and his passive ability of inspiring leadership lets all units in 20 strides use his whip, which is not bad at all. If you add the Wrathmane to a unit, he really starts to shine, bringing his willpower, +1 morale, and +1 conquest, which is really nice. But in attack, he adds in an auto hit, the ability to push with stress to gain another hit, and a strong red die attack. But in attack, he adds an auto hit, plus the ability to push with that stress, which will gain another auto hit and a strong red die to add to the attack pool. You also gain switches to inflict an extra wound with a hollow hit and or displace your enemy 3 strides with a hollow exclamation. All this and the Wrath Roar command ability is still here. Bringing the Hetman into a unit moves only his whip to the unit, no morale buff here. Attacking, he adds a hit plus a switch to get another hit with 2 hollow exclamations. He adds nothing to defense but +1 to conquest value. His command ability lets you ignore stress once per round, and the Steady Soldier's passive ability lets the unit re-roll willpower checks. These two are very different than the named versions, especially the Hetman. Though he's not bad in a unit, by comparison to Drago, I'd always be trying to find those 15 points to bring the anvil over this generic guy. The loss of elite, drop in attack, defense, and conquest value are so impactful with the generic unit. As for the northern tribes, the Wrathmane is a solid unit. Less of an out-and-out hammer as Alborc. He does some good work adding damage output, conquest value, morale, and switches to any unit he joins. Plus, Wrath Roar is going to be a pain to whoever you slap with it. Next on the list, the Spellcasters, the Evoker and the Frostfire Herald. Both are 25 points. Interestingly, with the Evoker, you also get an extra command token. The Evoker is a little slower with 3-2 for a move skill and 7 on the charge, to the Herald's 4-3 and 9. Both have 2 wounds, but the Herald is stronger on willpower, which is crucial for Spellcasters. The Herald has 3 medium orange dice, while the Evoker has 2 medium orange and a weak yellow for willpower. Both are morale 2, and you can only take one of them. Characteristics are simple enough, but the Herald does get fearless, making him immune to the intimidating skill and the frightened condition. On the attack, the Herald has 1 medium orange dice in close combat and a medium blue with single built-in block in defense, with 0 on the conquest value. The Evoker is a bit of a beast with 3 medium orange in close combat, plus a strong red attack die in defense and a single weak black defense die. The Evoker chooses violence, it seems. When we're talking about spells, the caster has the option to increase the power of a spell whilst also increasing the risk by adding black dice to the pool they roll against. These are called alterations in the rulebook, but we're going to call them buffs or buff. It's simpler. For spells, the Herald has Fireblaze, which is a 7-stride attack with a full rainbow attack of strong red, mid-orange and 2 weak yellows. You can then buff it to increase range to 12, or buff to gain a switch, which cancels 1 enemy success in defense. The second spell, Hand of Wind, has an 8-stride range and displaces an enemy unit 3 strides. You may then buff to give the target slow, so it only uses the first movement value when moving, and or buff so that hitting impassable terrain may cause damage. The Evoker has the Spirit of Thermoplurus, which lasts 4 turns and targets a friendly within 20 strides. This gives that unit Intimidating 1. Intimidating 1 makes anyone who fights that unit take a willpower test, which may result in them gaining stress. This can be buffed to make an enemy who takes stress from intimidating flee immediately, or buffed to increase the level of intimidating from intimidating 1 to intimidating 2, making it harder to pass the willpower check to avoid the impact of the stress. The Evoker's second skill is Summon Rock, which is an 8-stride ranged rainbow attack with 1 strong red, a mid-orange and 2 weak yellow dice. This can be buffed to increase range to 14 and or a heavier buff of 2 dice, which makes the spell stay active, causing the target and any enemy within 5 strides to gain the slow condition at the beginning of their next activation. For abilities, the Herald has 2 passive ones. Twins Bond lets you move an allied Gale Falchion within 5 strides for free. Still don't know what a Gale Falchion is? Still want one, or some, don't care, sounds cool. Works for me. Faculty of Magic Elixir lets the Herald remove a tinge token when resting, which makes his spellcasting more reliable thereafter. So that's nice. The Evoker has a command ability which can be used once per activation. Delegate the Ancestors lets you reduce the stress on an Orc unit by 1, or auto-rally another Orc unit, which is pretty nice. Both of these units are pretty cool, with this time the Hegemony having the more offensive-aggressive unit, whilst the Evoker for the Northern Tribes is more of a support unit who likes stabbing people in the face. Next, more support characters, the War Surgeon and the Wisemane. Both 15 points, the War Surgeon moves 3 and 3 with an 8-stride charge, 2 wounds, a medium orange willpower, 1 morale and availability of 1. Whilst the Wisemane is 2-3 and 9 charge, 3 wounds, a mid-orange and weak yellow willpower, 1 morale and availability 1. Both can join infantry, whilst the Wisemane is fearless. On the attack, the Wisemane is a beast, throwing a rainbow of 1 strong red, 2 mid-orange and 1 weak yellow dice. He can push to add in another strong red, plus gain a filled exclamation. He then has a double filled exclamation switch to give his target vulnerable. In defense, he gets a mid-blue and weak black dice, with the option to push for a strong red attack dice in there too. The Surgeon has 2 mid-orange in attack and a single weak black in defense. Both have conquest value 0. The Wisemane has no abilities. The War Surgeon, however, has the First Aid skill. This lets her target a friendly unit within 5 strides, reduce their stress by 1, and roll to heal their wounds, plus a switch on an exclamation to reduce their stress by a further 1. The passive ability Science Not Superstition heals 1 wound on any unit within 5 of the War Surgeon during the No One Gets Left Behind step. As both of these can be added to a unit, they have the characters in a unit section. The Wisemane adds a weak yellow die to willpower and 1 morale to the unit stats. He then adds a hit to their attack and a push which gets him an extra strong red die plus a filled in exclamation. The unit then gains a switch for double filled in exclamation to give out vulnerable. His defense is also tasty, giving a built-in block, ability to push for strong red attack die, and the same double exclamation to give vulnerable. Oh yes, attacking a unit with the Wisemane in can get you vulnerable in your turn. Lovely. He also adds +1 conquest value. By comparison, the War Surgeon does nothing, not even an extra conquest value. For abilities, the Wisemane has a command ability, the Voice of Experience, which lets you fix the result of 1 die from an attack or defense roll. He also has the passive ability, Charisma and Wisdom. This lets your unit gain Fearless, reroll willpower checks, and the ability to choose not to be pushed back without gaining stress like you normally would. The War Surgeon has a pair of passive abilities. The first is Medic. This lets you roll the War Surgeon's willpower and cancel damage up to the total number of hits rolled on the die. The ability also means you heal all wounds by resting. The second passive ability adds a hollow exclamation switch to the unit's attack, which causes 1 wound to the enemy. These 2 support characters are very different. One is for healing, the other for killing. I really like the flavour that gives for the armies and their different playstyles. Last but not least, we have the Infantry, the Black Legion Bucklermen and the Orc Hunters. Both are 20 points, with the Orc Hunters moving 3-2 and charging 10 with 2 wounds, 1 mid-orange willpower, 1 morale and availability 3. The Bucklermen are quicker on the move skill with 3-3 but slower on the charge at 9 strides. They are also 2 wounds, have the same 1 mid-orange willpower die, 1 morale and availability 3. Not much to talk about in the characteristics and keywords, so to the stabby stuff. At full strength, the Orcs get a rainbow in attack of strong red, 3 mid-orange and a weak yellow. with a double exclamation switch to give the target vulnerable. This drops to a strong red, 2 mid-orange and a single exclamation for the switch when down to 2 or less minis in the unit. Defense is a strong green, 2 weak blacks with a solid shield causing a hit on the attacker. This drops to a mid-blue and weak black with the same switch when at 2 or less. In either case, the conquest value is 1 for Orc Hunters. The Bucklermen get a strong red, 3 mid-orange on attack with a switch on hollow exclamation to add a defensive block to the attack. This drops to 2 mid-orange and 2 weak yellows with the same switch when 2 or less are left. Defense is 2 strong green and a weak black with solid exclamation adding a defense. Degrading to 2 mid-blue defense dice when at 2 or less left with the same switch. Interestingly, conquest value is 2 when in good shape, dropping to 1 when the casualties start to pile up. And that's it. All of the profiles for the units coming in the Winds from the North battle box for Warcrow. As you probably know by now, this will be available for pre-order from the 15th of July, but you can book yours now with the video sponsors CCG Winkle, link in the description. So what are your thoughts on the profile? Any standouts or ones you really don't like? So far, from our perspective, these forces feel pretty balanced, but still distinct. Really looking forward to seeing how they do on the tabletop. Our thanks as ever to our channel members and patrons. Your support keeps us going, so we really appreciate it. Big shout out to channel member Joe Rogers as ever. For everyone else, we appreciate your time and you joining us on this exploration of Lindworm. If you're not already, please subscribe, give the video a like, and if you have time, a comment. It really helps us and tells YouTube to show our stuff to more people, which hopefully will make more Warcrow players for you to play against. Everyone wins. We hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you again soon.